There is a legendary graffiti marker that all graffiti artists seem to love and revere. It was originally developed for industrial use and only comes in a single color. It comes from Japan, one of the top marker design and marker manufacturing companies in the entire world. I'm sure you already know we're talking about the Pentel Shorty 100W marker today. And even though this Pentel marker is widely known in the graffiti community, today, while we do a full surface tagging test on smooth and rough surfaces, I'm going to tell you 3 secrets about this Pentel Shorty that will 10x the Pentel Shorty and bring your graffiti tags to the next level with this marker. So let's get right to it. First, I'm going to tell you the subtle things that graffiti artists need to know about this Pentel Shorty marker, and then I'll tell you, while we're doing our surface tagging test, the 3 secrets that you can use as a graffiti writer to make this marker an even more valuable tagging tool, because there's a lot you can do with this marker and not everyone knows it. Okay, so there are 4 things that graffiti writers need to know about the Pentel Shorty. Number 1, this is a valve actuated marker, aka a pump action marker. So that means whenever you compress the nib, that's what allows the ink to flow through the marker. In layman's terms, it works the exact same way as any chisel tip marker like a grog cutter would work, or even something like a Molotow One for All. Number 2, it only comes in one color, I'll let you guess which one, and it actually can't be unscrewed to be refilled. Now, those 2 things are because it was originally designed for industrial use only and was thought of as being a disposable marker. But that's actually where one of the secrets about this marker comes in. I'll fill you in on that during our tagging test. Number 3, the attention to detail in this marker is insane. We have a nice metal body marker here with a mixing ball in it, and you can see that the body is crimped over the part of the marker that has the valve system in it. Hell, even the packaging is detailed enough to have a slit in the back to stop any kind of pressure building up during transport. Number 4, and this is the most consequential thing graffiti writers need to know, it is not a normal nib. The nibs that come in these Pentel Shorties are actually one of the longest nibs I have seen. It's about 1.4 inches long, which, to put it in perspective, even markers like the Uni PX30 here, which has a nib that's a far thicker chisel tip, isn't nearly as long as these Pentel Shorty nibs. The nib is a much thinner 4.8mm gauge at the other end, and that is so it can fit in the nice cylindrical part of the valve system and have a much more controlled compression and flow of the ink through the nib. That's just one of the many ways you can tell this Pentel Shorty is a step above other markers. But the nib being so unique in that regard is so consequential because it makes it really hard to replace these nibs. Even GR over at Art Primo said in a video,
we don't have replacement nibs for them, so if you eventually burn it out, you could easily get another one.
So Sciz, you're telling me this isn't supposed to be refilled and you can't get any replacement parts for it? Well, actually, all 3 of the secrets about leveling up this Pentel Shorty that I'm going to tell you right now while we do our tagging test fix all of those problems and make this Pentel Shorty a completely reusable marker. So let's head over to the testing area, see how it tags, and I'll fill you in on those. Okay, so we're in one of our testing areas that you guys haven't seen for quite a while actually, and we're gonna start throwing some tags up here on what I thought would be a great background to test our Pentel white out here. Why not a nice black background to really test the opacity of this Pentel Shorty here? And of course, while we test out the Pentel Shorty, we're gonna be just doing a few tags with a more standard bullet tip graffiti marker, in this case the OTR 4001 bullet marker there, just to get a difference between the class of the Pentel White versus that OTR bullet there. So we're gonna start tagging some names up here. The names we're tagging up today are names of patrons over on our Patreon page. All patrons get access to exclusive monthly videos like buff tests, graffiti piecing tutorials, and some other perks such as shoutouts like this. If you guys are interested in supporting the channel, making these reviews possible, right now it's currently $3 a month. You can check the Patreon out in the corner there. So let's see how this writes. Okay, so starting off with the Pentel White here, it was actually a little bit hard to start up, but once I got it working, it's very, very comfortable. You can tell it's an incredibly soft nib, which is nice. I think if you ask probably, you know, at least 60% of writers that I've met, they'll say softer nibs are a little bit nicer to write with. It just, for some reason, feels like you have a little more control, in my opinion, but this is a very soft nib. It will fray, of course, being a softer nib. Even the harder ones will fray eventually. The softer nib makes it feel very comfortable to write with, and once it was juiced up, you could press down on the nib a little bit even while you write. You can get a couple drips that way if you really want. That's a bit of a messier way to write, of course, but the flow was very continuous and persistent, which you would expect given that their valve system is sort of supposed to be a step above anything else there. In terms of the opacity, because that's really what we wanted to test, and because this is a Pentel White, we're testing it in harsh conditions, in that, of course, white on black is going to be very, very difficult for this to look opaque. And frankly, once I got it started up, you can see here, of course it's a little streaky. That's pretty much as good as it gets though. The parts that are very, very white though, at the beginnings and ends of the lines, you can tell those parts are very, very opaque. It's a nice bright, true white is what I would call it. So it's a very impressive white overall. One thing I do have to mention, most inks have a bit of a smell. This one's very faint, but if you do smell it, it smells sort of sweet. Someone that knows a bit more about formulae would be able to tell you what that indicates about it, but it smells quite nice. And we did compare it to the OTR bullet just briefly here. The bullet has a bit of a wider nib effectively. The main difference I noticed was the softness of the nib. The Pentel Shorty, very soft nib, complete opposite of, in my experience, a lot of bullet tips, but especially the OTR bullet. And it felt much more comfortable to write with something with not only a softer nib, but also a body that's just a little bit nicer shape to write with, if you will. So it's a little bit shorter, as you can see here. It's not rounded at the back. I don't really know why they did that, but this is just a nice comfortable way to write with a marker, especially if you do want to be compressing the nib while you write with it. This is a very good design in terms of actual writability. I don't want to talk about the blue paint too much. This was the OTR marker paint that we use there. If you want to see a full review of that, let me know in the comments. We can make that happen. Okay, so now that we've seen what the Pentel Shorty can do a little bit, I'm going to let you in on the first two sort of secrets to help you level up this marker for tagging. And we're going to start off, the first one is the most well-known one. It's also the most crucial one for turning this into a reusable graffiti marker. Now, this will be good for some of the newer writers, of course, but the secret is that this is actually 100% refillable, and it's not too hard to do. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that right now, so let's get to it. So the nice thing about pump action markers like this is that when the valve is compressed, liquid can flow either way through it. So that being said, if you do want to get more liquid into the marker, all you have to do is take the nib out, compress the valve, and use a bit of precision to pour a bit of ink into the valve. Now today we're just using a nail to compress the valve. You just want to use something sturdy. Don't press too hard. You don't want to mess the valve up. Like I said, use a bit of precision here. And so you can even see while we fill that up, all the ink was sitting on top when the valve wasn't compressed. Every time I compress the valve with that nail there, you can see the ink level goes down. That beautiful red incredible ink made its way into the marker through the valve there. Once we re-nib it, we test it out there, and you can see, bam, right away you're getting a nice juiced up beautiful red and white combo there. I'm really excited to see how the incredible ink combines with the Pentel White here. So what we just did is turn this from a one and done marker to a completely 100% refillable marker that you can use for tagging for years and years. If you do want to see a full review and tagging test and a buff test of this incredible ink, it's one of my favorite inks personally. You can see that in the corner or in the description. The full video is linked there. So while we see if this mixed well with the Pentel white, I'm going to be tagging some subscribers' names up to see if that happened. And while we do that, I'll tell you the second secret to make this even more reusable, to level up the Pentel Shorty. Okay, so really with the Aphic and the Tusk tag, you're starting to see the red mix in really nicely with the white. It does take a bit of time for them to mix together. You do want to shake it quite a bit before you use it. You can tell with the first few tags, it just looked almost white. And then you start to see the red tinge get in there a little bit. But the second way that we can make this even more reusable, it has to do with one little flaw of the Pentel white. The caps are incredibly unique, and that's fine. It's just that if you lose this cap and it doesn't fit on the other end or anything like that, you're sort of screwed, right? It's not like the normal chisel tip markers, such as like a K71 type thing, where all the caps for those markers are pretty much interchangeable. This is a very unique cap. It's a full seal cap as well. You need something full seal to protect anything that you have ink inside of. But I have one unique solution, and this is the second sort of secret to make this more reusable. If you happen to lose the cap for this, something that actually works is, believe it or not, a Pilot Supercolor cap. The cap just happens to be the exact right size, and yes, it is a full seal cap. You can just pop it right on there, and it actually seals not to this rim like the original cap does, but it seals on the one on top of it. It's just something that if you lose this, you're not going to lose your entire marker. Because of it, it's a fail-safe that can make this marker even more reusable as a graffiti tagging tool. So that was just a little sort of secret, but it is one that is crucial to keep this marker in good working condition for everyone. Because I know most people have a Pilot Supercolor kicking around if you've been in the game long enough. But now that we've made this almost entirely reusable, there's just one problem left: the nibs, right? We have not addressed the issue with the nibs. There's a very unique marker overall here, including the nibs. But I did quite a bit of research. I talked to my sources and I found out something interesting. So if you follow me over to my work area, I will show you exactly what you need to do to get new nibs for the Pentel Shorty here and make this a 100% reusable and refillable graffiti tagging tool, and you can keep using it for years and years. Guys, I looked and looked for a solution to get new nibs for the Pentel Shorty marker here, but in the end, it was actually just a very simple DIY solution that I want to share with you guys right now, so you have the secret to upping your Pentel Shorty tags with this new nib trick. So I was looking and looking for just anything that would be long enough to be used as a nib for the Pentel Shorty, and that's when it occurred to me. Sketching markers have very long nibs because the nibs need to go in and penetrate the tank of the marker, and that's how ink is drawn from the sketching markers, like this Iron Lac Striker here. So I pulled the nib out of that, and although it was long enough, I ultimately had to make a judgment call, and the nib just looked too dense, and I didn't want to mess with the Pentel valve system by putting a nib that was too dense in it. But that was all I needed to know, because from there, all I had to do was find another similar style nib that was less dense. And this is where it comes back around to another legendary Japanese marker that we already mentioned in this video, the Pilot Supercolor markers here. The part of the nib of the Pilot Supercolor here is the exact same length of the part that sticks out of the Pentel Shorty here. Furthermore, the actual whole nib on the Pilot Supercolor is the exact length you need for a Pentel Shorty as well. Once I figured that out, it was just a matter of using an X-Acto knife to slim down the sides to get that dual thickness effect of the Pentel nibs. And just look at the result here. Bam! Immediately you've got a Pentel Shorty white marker here with a chisel tip nib now that you can use for it, and it flows brilliantly. I used an older Supercolor nib, so it's nice and frayed already, nice and soft, feels beautiful to write with, and you can tell it only took about 3 tags. You can see once I got to the Sciz tag, it was becoming that nice, smooth, light pink color that we're seeing. It's a little hard to see the light pink tags on that wood, but honestly, the marker, the way it feels now, is even better than the original Pentel Shorty with the original nib, in my opinion. And to me, that is really the mod that will take your Pentel Shorty tag to the next level with a Pentel Shorty white marker. The incredible ink that we refilled the Pentel Shorty with earlier is a hell of an ink. It mixes great with a lot of things I've found. If you haven't seen how it performs on its own in a tagging test and a buff test even, you're gonna want to check out the video over here next. You can head over there right now. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the real crew over on the Patreon page, helping to make these graffiti reviews possible for everyone here. If you haven't been on the Patreon, you can check it out for exclusive content over there as well. You can check that out here. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.